Alright, so today we're going to be looking at this drawing of an anime character and see how we can improve it. I'm not really sure what is happening. Is he taking off or is he landing? Based on the direction of the flame right here, I'm going to assume he's landing, which would make the tippy toe uh, foot pose right here make sense. Um, what I think we can improve is the line of action and the overall clarity and intention of the piece. So let's go ahead and do that. First, what we want is a pretty clear line of action. And because he's going to be landing, we're starting at the top and drawing a line downwards rather than going upwards. Little things like that, even though they may result in the same line, help clarify the intentions of the piece. So we have the shoulders right there, the hips right there. He's going to be coming in at this angle, and that's basically your arrow. So we want a body shape and gesture that reflects that. There's my arrow. I'm getting the gesture first, just to help make everything easier later on. If it doesn't work in the gesture phase, it's not going to work at any other time either, no matter how many details and muscles and fancy lines and colors I throw on it. I'm putting the hands like that to give an impression. I'm putting the arms like that to give an impression of air resistance. If I were to put the arms down here, it would still work, but it also sort of looks like he's taking off. He's flying upwards, and what we want is a very clear statement that he's landing. And for the sake of clarity, we have to make those changes. Drawings should be clear. They don't necessarily have to be clean, but they should be clear. And there's no way this pose is going to be confused for the guy taking off. What I'm doing right now is just breaking it down into three-dimensional shapes. This is even before I've worried about anatomy. The funny thing is, I don't even have to do construction right now, and I probably shouldn't. I should be focused on the gesture of this arm, see if there are any interesting shapes I can pull out. And just right there, I got an interesting shape right there that I'll try to preserve. That's how you see artists come up with interesting versions and interesting takes on, say, a forearm or a shoulder. Yes, it's anatomically based, but at the same time, a lot of the times it just comes from the gesture, and they try to preserve that while making it as true to the anatomy as possible. Also note that I'm seeing the chest, the barrel of the chest this way. It just helps give it more of a landing feel. The perspective is from below. If it was something like that. That could also work. That sort of landing pose. That could work, but when you try to combine the two, it gets tricky and unclear. And that's what's happening here. You have your chest going sort of like that, while this is straight and this is out here. That just looks and feels uncomfortable to me. Take your time. It's not a race. There's no law saying you have to get it in X amount of time before you're considered a good artist or it's considered a good drawing. The people don't know how long it took unless you tell them and show them. Well, that's not true. They know when you rushed it. But if you did a good if you did a good job of drawing it, they don't know how long it took. So there's no real reason to rush anything. I'll have to fix this leg. I'm not happy with that. For me, it's a problem of the anatomical shape, just trying to get that in there. And erasing and revisions are part of the process. Okay, that's feeling a lot better. The more you know your anatomy, the easier it gets to see if it's right or wrong. So I definitely encourage you studying your anatomy. Now, when the leg is stretched out like that, this muscle, the quadriceps here, flex. And so we want to get an impression of that. That just helps give it more believability. It also allows for the presentation of some much more interesting shapes. And that's what drawing is. It's design. Even if you go realistic like Norman Rockwell or Robert Fawcett, you'll see how much design and abstract design is involved in their work. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can read their interviews. And that's actually a great way to learn as well. reading interviews with your favorite artists just to see how they approach thinking in drawing. Part of the key to learning um, anatomy and construction is learning gesture. You'll notice what I'm focused on a lot are the rhythms and the flow of the lines. I feel that for me, that just allows me to make much more interesting drawings that flow together better. So just because I have my gesture lines down the first time doesn't mean I'm trapped with them. I can still go back, erase, and modify as needed, as um, as needed by the needs of construction and anatomy. That's the great thing about drawing. You can always erase and fix something. It's not like sculpture with stone, where when you screw up, you have to find a whole new piece of stone and start all over again. It's more like clay. If you screw up, just smooth it out and begin again. So what I'm doing here is trying to keep the volume of the arms correct. Before it was looking like his left arm was a little bit too big compared to his right arm. Now remember what I said originally about wind resistance pushing these arms up as he's coming down. Um, I'm gonna have to apply the same thinking to the hands and the fingers here. So even if I put my hand something like that, and notice I've just blocked in some shapes. I've not really even drawn a hand just yet. Something like that. Let's see, what can I do for this hand? One of the greatest sins in drawing is twinning, is when both halves are equally the same. What we want to do from a design perspective is make it a little bit asymmetrical. That asymmetry in nature is considered ugly, but in design and drawing, it's what makes it more believable, and there's something appealing about it. That's because in nature, nothing is perfectly symmetrical. There's no such thing as perfection. Nothing is perfectly round. Nothing is perfectly uh, equal on each side. And by giving our drawings, or by making our drawings asymmetrical, we help continue that illusion. That's not working. I'm having a hard time finding the position for that other finger. So what I can do is, because I like what I have here with the thumb and that finger, I'm gonna treat the rest of the fingers like a single group and try to find it that way. And remember what I said about rhythms. If you manage to learn those rhythms, it's going to be a lot easier to draw. If instead of thinking of the finger as, say, a cylinder here, a cylinder here, and a cylinder there, if you think of it as rhythms like that, it just becomes a lot easier to draw, especially in much more difficult posing. That one needs to go probably right there. All right, so there's our guy. Now what we need is the neck. And what I like about this drawing, the original, is that he has an expression on his face. It tells a story, so I want to keep that story going. To me, the story is that he's showing off to somebody. He's looking at maybe a cute girl or guy that he likes, and he's flirting with them. So now that I have a general placeholder for the head, I can go in and construct that as well. And because we have this perspective on our torso, on our upper chest, we're going to have to continue that on the neck and face. It would not make sense to have the neck and face go like this, at least for this story. And as you can see, that looks rather painful and uncomfortable. So that's why I'm curving the eye line like that. So once I have a good what I'm going to do now is flip the drawing just to check it. I'm having a little bit of trouble with the head. I'm not happy with the shapes I'm using. Um, Design is very important to me. It's what makes something look good and not just correct, technically correct. So what I like to do is while I'm doing my gesture, I'm also nailing the design aspect of it. What I did there was get rid of the whole single unit head, and I'm going to break it down into separate parts. I've got the cranium. What I need now is the jaw, the mandible. That just allows me to construct the drawing better. That's generally a pretty good tip. Instead of trying to draw the hand all as one piece, it helps to break it down. That just helps you get something. Well, it's like a brick wall versus an individual brick. If you can handle an individual brick, you can build a brick wall. But if you look at a whole brick wall by itself without looking at the individual pieces, it just gets that much harder to manage and recreate. Not happy with that center line. There we go. I think that's working a lot better. Nose would be somewhere there. Mouth somewhere there. And you can pretty much finish from there. Flames, yeah, you can, again, do it like this, the whole singular piece, but maybe it would be better to handle it as individual flames and break it down into separate pieces. It just gives you a lot more control. And then you can go back and bring it all together. So what I would do is erase that just a little bit. Let's see here. That was a little bit too strong an erase job. Something like that, maybe. And now that I have everything figured out, it just becomes a lot easier to go in and add the clothes. So he's wearing a t-shirt. He's moving downwards, so the sleeves are going to be dragging. Instead of having the sleeves like that, they're going to be dragging a little bit. Same thing here. And instead of having the collar wrap around his neck like that, we could have it sort of float up like that. All those little things to help sell the illusion that he's landing. That one works. Let's see. Is he wearing a belt or is he not? Seems to be he's wearing skinny jeans or very tight-fitting jeans. So knowledge of anatomy becomes even more important. But so does knowledge of clothing and how it's stitched together and how wrinkles fold together. Or rather, how folds wrinkle up. Maybe something like that. His hair, he has sideburns, and they don't look to be like sideburns attached. They're not like Elvis sideburns where they're fixed on the face. They seem to be more like loose ponytail or really long hair bangs. So what we can do to sell the idea that he's landing is give it a little bit of drag. Because he's coming in it this way, the drag would be going the opposite direction. And by the way, this is not what I would consider a realistic drawing, neither the original nor my finished version, my redraw. It's not about being realistic, it's about being solid. Maybe something like that. Let's flip it and check it for any mistakes. I'm glad I did because there are some major issues happening here. But if I take that neck in, I managed to fix a lot of them. All right, so that's how I would handle that redraw. Thank you very much for your time.